Commander sat in the recording chamber, his four arms resting on the smooth metal table. The lights above him were too bright, making his blue skin look almost purple. He had been a soldier for 30 years. He had seen battles that would make most beings lose their minds. But today, sitting in front of the Galactic Council's recording device, he felt something he rarely felt anymore. Fear. Not the fear of dying. He had faced death 1,000 times. This was different. This was the fear of remembering. "Commander," the voice came from the speaker, "please state your name and rank for the record." "Commander, 5th Fleet of the Empire. Serial number 847, Alpha Thorn." "Thank you, Commander. You have been called here to provide testimony about the Terran Alliance, specifically about humanity. Do you understand?" His mandibles clicked together nervously. "I understand." "Please begin with your first encounter with a human." Closed his 3 eyes and took a deep breath. The memories came flooding back like water through a broken dam. It was 15 cycles ago. The Devourers had just attacked Prime, his home world. The Devourers were a nightmare made real. They were parasites, creatures that consumed entire civilizations. They didn't just kill you. They absorbed you, your knowledge, your culture. Everything you were became food for them. 47 civilizations had fallen to the Devourers. 47 different species, wiped from existence. And now they had come for The battle had been brutal. Had lost his secondary left arm in the fighting. His ship had been destroyed. He barely escaped in a life pod, drifting in space for 2 days before a rescue ship found him. They took him to a medical station on the edge of the war zone. That's where he met her. She was small, even for a human. She had dark hair tied back in a simple knot and wore the white uniform of a medical officer. When she walked into his recovery room, had been in terrible pain. His wounds were not healing properly. Biology was complex, and most alien doctors didn't know how to treat them correctly. But was different. She didn't hesitate. She didn't look afraid or confused. She just smiled at him and started working. "Hello, Commander," she had said, her voice soft but steady. "I'm going to fix you up. This might hurt a bit, but I promise you'll feel better soon." Had watched in amazement as her hands moved across his body. She worked with tools he had never seen before. She knew exactly where to touch, where to inject medicine, where to apply pressure. It was like she had been treating her whole life. But the strangest part was the sound she made. As she worked, she hummed. A soft, gentle melody that filled the room. Later, she told him it was called a lullaby, a song humans sang to their young to help them sleep. It took her 4 hours to reattach his severed arm. 4 hours of delicate surgery that should have required a full medical team. She did it alone, humming that strange song the whole time. When she finished, felt better than he had in years. The pain was gone. His arm moved perfectly, as if it had never been torn off. "Thank you," he had said, his voice full of genuine gratitude. "You saved my life." Had smiled again, that same gentle smile. "You're welcome, we're just getting started." At the time, didn't understand what she meant. He thought she was talking about his recovery. But now, sitting in this recording chamber, he understood perfectly. She had been talking about the war. "Commander," the voice from the speaker interrupted his thoughts. "Please continue. What happened after you recovered?" Opened his eyes. "I returned to my fleet, but I couldn't stop thinking about her, about the humans. The galaxy was talking about them. First contact had happened only 2 years before. Humanity had been discovered by the devourers of all species. Everyone expected them to die like all the others. But they didn't die." "No," said quietly. "They didn't die. Instead, they fought back. And they won. Not just survived. Won. They pushed the devourers back, rescued other species, and joined the war effort. In 2 years, they had become one of the most important military forces in the galaxy." "And this surprised you?" "Everything about humans surprised me," admitted. "They were new, unknown. They came from a planet called Earth, far out in an unexplored arm of the galaxy. They had no advanced technology when they were discovered, no shields, no energy weapons. They still used chemical rockets to travel in space. Yet they defeated the Devourers. Yes, and that's what made me curious. How? How did a primitive species defeat an enemy that had consumed 47 advanced civilizations? Remembered the reports he had read during his recovery. Battle after battle, humans did the impossible. They were creative in ways that made no sense. They took risks that should have killed them. They sacrificed themselves for others without hesitation. One report described a human ship that had rammed directly into a Devourer cruiser to save a medical transport. The human crew had ejected at the last second, but 3 of them didn't make it. They died saving people they had never met. Another report told of human soldiers who held a position for 16 hours against impossible odds. They had no supplies, no reinforcements, no chance of survival, but they held the line anyway, allowing thousands of civilians to escape. Commander, you seem troubled. What bothers you about humanity? Looked directly at the recording device. This was the question he had been dreading. How could he explain? How could he make them understand? I have been a soldier for 30 years, he began slowly. I have fought the Devourers who consume everything. I have battled the Collective who show no mercy. I have faced the Void Reapers who kill for pleasure. All of them wanted to destroy me, to kill me, and I understood that. I knew how to fight enemies who wanted me dead. He paused, his mandibles trembling slightly. But humans are different. They don't just fight to kill their enemies. They fight to protect their friends. And if they decide you are their friend, they will die for you. They will sacrifice everything for you, without question, without hesitation. And this frightens you. Yes, said his voice barely above a whisper. Because I have faced enemies who wanted to kill me. That is normal. That is war. But I have never faced beings who would die for me, who would throw themselves into danger to keep me safe. That kind of loyalty, that kind of dedication. It's terrifying. Why? Thought of, humming her lullaby while she worked. He thought of the human soldiers who died saving strangers. He thought of everything he had learned about humanity in the years since that first meeting. Because, he said finally, if humans will go that far for their friends, I can only imagine what they would do to their enemies. And I pray to the stars that I never have to find out. The recording device blinked, saving his words for history. Sat back in his chair, knowing that his testimony had only just begun. There was so much more to tell, so many more reasons why humans frightened him. And the galaxy needed to know all of it. The second day of recording began with a simple question. Commander, please tell us about the siege of VII. Felt his breathing quicken. Even after all these years, thinking about VII made his blood run cold. It had been the worst moment of his military career, the closest he had ever come to giving up hope. VII was a coalition outpost, he began. 15 different species had bases there. It was important because of its location. 3 major trade routes intersected near the planet. Control VII and you control a significant part of the sector. The Devourers knew this. Yes, they sent a swarm, not just a few ships, a swarm, thousands of their vessels all converging on one planet. The coalition forces were caught off guard. We had maybe 5,000 soldiers total. The Devourers had at least 100,000 drones. Remembered the panic, the chaos. Ships trying to escape were torn apart in space. The orbital defense platforms fell within hours. The ground forces had no choice but to retreat underground into the old mining tunnels beneath the planet's surface. We had 40,000 civilians with us, continued. Families, children, people who worked on the base. We couldn't evacuate them. The Devourers controlled the space around the planet. Every ship that tried to leave was destroyed. So you were trapped. Completely, we set up in the tunnels and waited. We had some food, some ammunition, but not enough, not nearly enough. The Devourers didn't attack right away. They knew we couldn't escape, so they waited too. They were starving us out. Days turned into weeks. The food ran out. Then the medicine. People started getting sick. The soldiers rationed the ammunition, knowing that when it was gone, they would have nothing left but their bare hands. Had been one of the commanding officers. He had to make decisions that still haunted him. Who got the last of the food? The soldiers or the children? Who got the medicine? The wounded who might recover or the dying who needed comfort? After 3 weeks, we were ready to surrender, admitted. We had no choice. People were dying of starvation. The children were crying. We couldn't hold out any longer. But then the humans came. Yes, then the humans came. Remembered that moment perfectly. The coalition commanders were gathered in the main chamber, preparing to send the surrender message. Then their communications officer picked up a signal. Ships had entered the system. Human ships. 3 cruisers, just 3, against a devourer swarm of thousands. The coalition commanders thought it was a mistake. 3 ships couldn't possibly make a difference. But then they received a transmission. "This is Captain Menu of the Terran ship Indomitable. We received your distress call. We're here to help." Had spoken to the captain directly. He remembered how young Menu sounded, how confident. "Captain, you don't understand," had said. "There are thousands of devourer ships up there. 3 cruisers can't fight them all. You need to leave while you still can." Menu had laughed, actually laughed. "Commander, with respect, we've got this. Just sit tight. We're going to get you out." Thought the human was insane. 3 ships and 800 soldiers against the entire devourer swarm. It was suicide. But then he learned about the human plan. They weren't going to fight the swarm. Not directly. Instead, they were going to draw the entire devourer force away from the planet while the coalition forces evacuated. They were using themselves as bait, explained. The humans would land on the opposite side of the planet, make a lot of noise, and get the devourers to focus on them. While the swarm was distracted, we would sneak the civilians onto transport ships and escape. That seems like a reasonable strategy. It would have been, except for one problem. To draw the entire swarm, the humans would need to hold their position for at least 72 hours, 3 days, against 100,000 devourer drones, with only 800 soldiers. The room fell silent. "It was a death sentence," said quietly. "Everyone knew it, even the humans knew it, but they did it anyway." Watched on the monitors as the human ships landed. The soldiers poured out, setting up defensive positions with incredible speed. They had brought weapons, so many weapons, and explosives. One of the humans, a man named, was in charge of demolitions. Spoke to him briefly before the fighting started. "That's a lot of explosives," had observed. Had grinned, a wide smile that showed all his teeth. "We brought enough antimatter charges to crack this planet's crust. If things go bad, we're taking the whole swarm with us." "That's insane." "We call it aggressive negotiation," had replied cheerfully. The devourers took the bait. The entire swarm descended on the human position like a wave of death. The coalition forces began the evacuation, moving as quickly and quietly as possible, but couldn't look away from the monitors showing the human position. The fighting was unlike anything he had ever seen. The devourers came in waves, thousands at a time. The humans met them with concentrated fire, explosions, and something didn't expect. Laughter. The humans were laughing, singing, making jokes over their communication channels even as they fought for their lives. One young soldier, barely into adulthood, had taken a position on top of a damaged vehicle. His name was, watched as fired his weapon continuously, mowing down devourer after devourer. Then a devourer drone got through the line and attacked directly. The creature broke the human's arm, then his leg, then his other arm. should have died, should have retreated, should have done anything except what he actually did. He kept fighting. With 3 broken limbs, propped his weapon against the vehicle and continued firing. He was singing something. Later, learned it was called a war song, something humans sang to keep their courage up during battle. Why, had asked a human medic later, why didn't he retreat? The medic, a woman named Sumi, had looked at him with confusion. His squad was behind him. If he retreated, they would be exposed, so he stayed. But he was injured badly. So his finger still worked. He could still pull the trigger. That's all that mattered. Had no response to that. The humans held for 72 hours, not because they had superior weapons, not because they had better armor. They held because they simply refused to break. When ammunition ran low, they fought hand to hand. When weapons broke, they used knives. When knives broke, they used rocks. Sumi, the medic, had her own station set up right in the middle of the battlefield. Had asked her why she didn't evacuate with the first group of wounded. "My patients are still here," she had said simply, as if it was the most obvious answer in the world. She stayed for all 72 hours, treating wounded soldiers while explosions went off around her. She never flinched, never complained, just kept working, humming that same kind of lullaby that had hummed. On the 3rd day, the last civilian transport escaped the planet. The evacuation was complete. All 40,000 civilians were safe. The human commander, Minyu, gave the order. "All units fall back to extraction point. Time to go home." The humans had planted their explosives in a massive grid around their position. As they retreated, triggered the charges remotely. The explosion was visible from orbit. It tore through the devourer swarm like a knife through paper. 47,000 drones were destroyed in an instant. The humans extracted, all 800 of them. Every single one survived. Had met Minyu after the evacuation. He had to know. "Captain, how did you do it? How did all of you survive?" Minyu had smiled, that same confident smile. "Because we didn't calculate acceptable losses, Commander. We calculated an unacceptable victory. Losing wasn't an option, so we didn't lose." "But you risked everything, for people you didn't even know." "That's what we do," Minyu had said. "That's what makes us human." In the recording chamber, looked at the device and spoke clearly. "The siege of VII taught me something important about humans. They don't think like we do. We calculate odds, we measure risks, we accept that some battles cannot be won. Humans, they don't accept that. They look at impossible situations and say, 'Watch this.' And somehow, impossibly, they win." He paused, his mandibles clicking softly. "That's when I started to understand why I found them so frightening. Because they had already decided we were worth saving. And nothing, not even death itself, was going to change their minds." After VII, couldn't stop thinking about humans. He started researching them during his free time. What he discovered made his unease grow deeper with each passing day. "Commander," the voice asked, "what made you decide to study humanity?" "Curiosity," replied, "and fear. After watching 800 humans hold off 100,000 devourers, I needed to understand. Where did they come from? What made them this way? I thought if I learned about their history, their world, I could make sense of what I had seen." He had started with the basic files. Earth, the human home world, located in a quiet spiral arm of the galaxy, far from the major civilizations. When he read the planetary classification, he had to check twice to make sure it was correct. Class 12 Death World. His own home planet was classified as Class 4. Most inhabited worlds in the galaxy ranged from Class 1 to Class 6. Anything above Class 8 was considered too dangerous for complex life. Earth was Class 12. "I didn't believe it at first," admitted. "The classification system goes up to 15, but I had never heard of anything above Class 9 supporting intelligent life. So I dug deeper." What he found horrified him. Earth's atmosphere was corrosive to most species. The oxygen levels were dangerously high, causing rapid aging and cellular damage. The gravity was 1.3 times standard, enough to crush the bones of most sentient beings. The temperature swings ranged from hot enough to boil water to cold enough to freeze carbon dioxide solid. And the life forms. Earth is covered in predators, explained. Not just a few, thousands of different species all trying to kill each other, and humans evolved right in the middle of it all. He had read about creatures called bears. They were massive, weighing as much as 3 adults. They had claws that could tear through metal and jaws strong enough to crush bones. They were apex predators, the kind of creature that would be considered a planetary threat on most worlds. Humans lived alongside them. Some humans even went hiking in areas where bears lived, just for fun. Had interviewed a human scientist named during a joint research mission. She was studying alien life forms. He had asked her about Earth's wildlife. "Oh, it's beautiful," she had said with genuine enthusiasm. "So much diversity. When I was a child, I used to go camping in the mountains with my family." "Wasn't that dangerous?" "Well, yes, there were bears and mountain lions. My father always carried a rifle just in case, but we knew how to be careful. You make noise so you don't surprise them. You store your food properly. You respect their territory." Had been stunned. You went into predator territory voluntarily, for recreation. Had laughed. Of course, it's relaxing. Relaxing. Humans found being surrounded by apex predators relaxing. But the predators were just the beginning. Learned about Earth's weather systems. Hurricanes that could level entire cities. Tornadoes that picked up buildings and threw them like toys. Earthquakes that split the ground open. Volcanoes that buried entire regions in ash. And through it all, humans had not just survived, they had thrived. They built cities in earthquake zones, told the recording device. They lived on the slopes of active volcanoes. They constructed homes in areas that were regularly hit by hurricanes. When natural disasters destroyed their buildings, they rebuilt, in the same spot, again and again. Then had studied human history. That's when his fear truly began. 10,000 years of recorded history. 10,000 years of continuous warfare. Humans had been fighting each other since before they developed agriculture. They had created weapons of incredible sophistication, each generation building deadlier tools than the last. Spears, swords, bows, guns, missile, nuclear weapons. Had spoken with a human engineer named about this. They were working together on a ship repair and had carefully brought up the subject of human warfare. "Your species has been fighting for a long time," had observed. Had nodded, his expression becoming serious. "Yes, too long. We've done terrible things to each other. Wars that killed millions. Weapons that could destroy our entire planet. But you stopped." "We learned," had replied quietly. "We developed nuclear weapons during our Second World War. We used them, saw what they could do. Then we built more, thousands of them, enough to kill everything on Earth dozens of times over." "Why would you build so many?" "Fear, paranoia. We called it mutually assured destruction. The idea was that if everyone had enough weapons to destroy everyone else, no one would dare start a war. We stood on the edge of annihilation for decades, with our fingers on the trigger." "What happened?" Had looked directly at. "We chose restraint. We realized that having the power to destroy everything meant we had to be very, very careful about how we used that power. We made agreements, treaties. We reduced our weapon stockpiles. We're still violent, still capable of terrible things, but we know what we're capable of now, and that knowledge makes us careful." That conversation had stayed with. Humans had looked into the darkest parts of their own nature and somehow found the strength to step back from the edge. But what truly frightened was the contradiction. The same species that built planet-killing weapons also cried over small things. He had witnessed this personally. A human communications officer named had been devastated when a rescue probe malfunctioned. The probe was a simple machine designed to search for survivors in debris fields. It had gotten damaged during a mission and couldn't be repaired. Had found in the repair bay, tears running down her face as she held a piece of the broken probe. "Are you injured?" he had asked, concerned. "No," she had said, wiping her eyes. "It's just, we called her lucky. This probe saved 17 people over the past 2 years, and now she's gone." "It was a machine." "She was our friend," had corrected him gently. "She had a job and she did it well. She deserved better than this." Had stood there completely confused, was mourning a machine, a simple tool, but to her it was more than that. Humans formed emotional bonds with everything, their ships, their weapons, their equipment. And if they formed bonds with machines, their bonds with living beings were even stronger. Had seen this in action. Humans didn't just work together, they became families. They called each other by nicknames. They celebrated each other's birthdays. They shared meals and stories and laughter. When a human soldier died, the entire unit mourned. They held ceremonies. They told stories about the fallen. They carried photographs and personal items to remember their friends. "This is what I tried to explain to the council," said to the recording device. "Humans pack bond with everything. It's not a conscious choice. It's part of their nature. They look at something, anything, and their first instinct is to care about it." He remembered a conversation with the. She had explained it to him during one of their talks. "We evolved as social creatures," she had said. "Humans are weak individually. We're not very strong. We're not very fast. We don't have claws or fangs or armor. What we have is each other. Our survival has always depended on cooperation, on caring for the group. So we developed the ability to form strong emotional connections, to anyone, to anything. Even your enemies." "Eventually, yes. If you spend enough time with someone, even an enemy, humans will start to care. We can't help it. It's who we are." That was the terrifying truth. Humans would bond with you whether you wanted them to or not. And once they decided you were part of their group, part of their family, they would protect you with everything they had. Thought about VII, about Minu and his crew risking everything for strangers, about fighting with broken limbs, about Sumi staying in the battle zone to treat wounded soldiers. They hadn't known the people they were saving, had never met them before, but it didn't matter. Those people needed help, so the humans helped. Simple as that. "The galaxy doesn't understand," said quietly. "They see humans as allies, as friends, as heroes, and they are all those things, but they don't see what I see." "And what do you see, Commander?" Was quiet for a long moment. "I see a species that evolved on a death world, that fought predators and each other for thousands of years, that developed weapons capable of destroying their own planet, that looked into the abyss and chose to be better. But that darkness is still there. That capacity for violence is still part of them." He leaned forward, his voice intense. "Humans are kind because they choose to be, gentle because they decide to be. But underneath that kindness is a predator that evolved to survive in hell. And if you ever threaten what humans have decided to protect, you will meet that predator. And it will be the last thing you ever see." The recording chamber was silent, except for the soft hum of the device. Sat back, his statement complete. The galaxy needed to understand. Humans were wonderful allies, but they were also the most dangerous beings in the known universe. And the only thing keeping that danger in check was their own choice to be good. Pray to the stars that they never changed their minds. The recording chamber felt colder on the 4th day, had barely slept, knowing what he had to discuss today. Some memories were darker than others. Some moments changed how you saw the universe. "Commander, yesterday you spoke about human nature, about their capacity for both kindness and violence. Can you provide a specific example?" Mandibles clicked nervously. Yes, the incident. It happened 3 years after VII. It's the moment when the entire galaxy learned why humans have rules of engagement. The collective had been a problem for decades. They were raiders, pirates who attacked merchant vessels and slave traders who sold their captives to the highest bidder. The galaxy had tried to stop them, but they were clever. They operated in disputed space where no single government had authority. Then they made a mistake, a terrible, fatal mistake. They attacked a civilian transport ship traveling through neutral space. The ship was carrying refugees from a war zone, families, human aid workers, children. 200 children, 40 human adults. They took the ship and everyone on it hostage. They sent demands to the Galactic Council. They wanted territorial rights to 3 systems. They wanted immunity from prosecution. They wanted money. The Council had prepared to negotiate. Hostage situations were delicate. You had to be careful, move slowly, make sure everyone stayed calm. The Terran Alliance had a different response. I was in the council chambers when the human ambassador spoke, remembered. Everyone expected them to agree to the negotiations, to work with us to find a peaceful solution. Instead, their representative, a woman named, stood up and made a simple statement. Could still hear her voice, calm, cold, absolutely certain. We will handle this. That was all she said, 3 words, then she sat down. The council had been confused. Handle what? How? The humans had no authority in neutral space. They couldn't just act unilaterally. But they did. 20 hours after they made their demands, a human special operations team requested permission to dock with the flagship, not to negotiate, to resolve the situation. The request came from a commander named, had looked up his record, was a veteran of the Devourer War. He had 43 successful missions, 0 failures. The council had debated. Some members thought it was too risky, but the representative, desperate to save the children, gave permission. His team went in, 12 humans, that's all, 12 humans against a flagship with 4,000 soldiers. What happened next became legend. I watched the timeline later, explained. The human team docked with the flagship at 300 station time. At 3:40, exactly 40 minutes later, they contacted us. Mission complete. Hostages secured. Come pick them up. 40 minutes. 40 minutes, confirmed. 4,000 soldiers, 40 minutes. Not a single hostage injured, not a single human casualty. The council had been stunned. They sent ships immediately to retrieve the hostages. When they arrived, they found all 240 hostages safe in the docking bay, scared but unharmed. The soldiers gone, not dead, just gone. The flagship was empty except for the hostages and the human team. 4,000 soldiers had simply vanished. Had been part of the investigation team. He had examined the ship's systems personally. The security logs showed nothing. The AI records were blank. It was as if they had never existed. But they had existed, found evidence. Scorch marks from energy weapons, broken equipment, signs of a brief, brutal fight. And messages. Hundreds of messages they had tried to send in those 40 minutes. Most were garbled, panicked, but a few were clear. Demons. They're everywhere. Can't see them. How are they doing this? The last message, sent at 3:39, just 1 minute before contacted the council, was 3 words. We surrender, please. Had met with after the rescue. He needed to know what happened. Commander, the soldiers, where are they? Had been polite but distant. In detention facilities across 3 different systems. They'll stand trial for their crimes. But how? How did you capture 4,000 soldiers in 40 minutes without killing any of them? We followed the rules, had replied simply. What rules? Rules of engagement, laws of war. There were enemy combatants who had committed crimes, but they were still protected under galactic law, so we treated them accordingly. We disabled them, disarmed them, and detained them. No unnecessary force, no executions by the book. Had pressed harder, but the security footage, the AI logs, everything is blank. Had smiled then, a cold smile that didn't reach his eyes. We're very good at what we do, Commander. They had no protections in place, no shields, no defenses. They thought they were safe. They were wrong. That non-answer had told everything he needed to know. The humans had capabilities that the galaxy didn't understand. They could move unseen, strike without warning, disable thousands of enemies without anyone knowing how. And they had been holding back this entire time. The footage eventually leaked, told the recording device. Intelligence channels, black market data traders, I saw some of it. He wished he hadn't. The footage showed shadows, human soldiers moving through the ship like ghosts. They appeared behind guards, dropped them with precise strikes, and disappeared before alarms could sound. They moved through ventilation systems, across ceilings, through spaces that shouldn't have fit a human body. They were predators, evolved hunters from a death world, and they were hunting. But what struck most was the efficiency. No wasted movement, no unnecessary violence. The humans neutralized each soldier with minimal force. A precise blow, a dart, a shock. Down they went, unconscious but alive. It wasn't brutal, it was surgical. The collective disbanded within a year, continued. The survivors spread the story, told everyone what happened. Humans came, humans hunted us, humans caught us, and we never saw them coming. Other pirate groups listened. Raiders operating in neutral space suddenly became very careful about who they attacked. If a ship had humans on board, it was left alone. Always. Because the message was clear. Attack humans or their friends and humans would come for you. Not with fleets, not with armies, with silent shadows that would take you apart piece by piece. Had spoken with the human ambassador after the incident. He had to understand. Ambassador, your people, the way you fight, it's unlike anything we've ever seen. Had looked tired, sad even. We've been fighting for a long time, Commander, thousands of years. We've learned every trick, developed every technique. We know 100 different ways to kill someone, 1,000 ways to win a battle. But you don't use them. Not unless we have to, she had agreed. We have rules, laws of war, Geneva Conventions, international humanitarian law. We created these rules to protect people, to limit the damage we could do to each other. But they broke those rules. Yes, and that's the important part. Those rules exist to protect others from us, not to protect others from them. When someone operates outside those rules, when they target children and innocents, they lose the protections those rules provide. Had leaned forward, her expression serious. We've seen what we become without restraint, Commander. We've seen the darkest parts of our own history. The wars, the atrocities, the times when we let ourselves become monsters. So we wrote rules, built systems, created boundaries to make sure we never go back to that darkness. But you can go back. If we have to, she had admitted quietly. If someone hurts children, if someone targets the innocent, if someone crosses the line, then yes, we remember what we're capable of, and we do what needs to be done. Had felt a chill run down his spine. The galaxy sees humans as protectors, she had continued. As heroes, as friends, and we'll fight for you, die for you, protect you with everything we have. But you need to understand something important. What's that? The only thing more dangerous than a human enemy is a human friend who thinks you've crossed the line. Because enemies we just fight. But if you hurt our friends, if you hurt children, if you attack the innocent, then we stop being soldiers. We become something much worse. What's worse than a soldier? Had stood, preparing to leave. She paused at the door and looked back at. A human with nothing left to lose and everything to avenge. In the recording chamber, finished his statement about the incident. The galaxy learned an important lesson that day. Humans have rules, boundaries, limits on what they'll do, but those limits exist to protect you from them, not them from you. Break the rules, hurt the innocent, cross the line, and you'll discover that humans have been holding back, that their kindness is a choice. Their mercy is a gift, and both can be taken away. He looked directly at the recording device. The found out what humans are like without those restraints. 4,000 soldiers defeated in 40 minutes, not killed, captured, because even in their anger humans maintained their discipline, followed their rules, stayed on the right side of the line. Paused, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. I pray that I never have to see what humans are like when they decide the rules no longer apply. The final day of recording had arrived, felt exhausted but also relieved. He had told his story, shared his fears. Now he just needed to finish. Commander, we've heard your testimony about humanity, about their kindness and their capacity for violence, about the contradiction that defines them. Today, we'd like you to provide your final assessment. In your professional opinion, what should the galaxy understand about humans? Took a deep breath. This was the question he had been preparing for, the statement that would be recorded for history, the warning that future generations needed to hear. The galaxy sees humans as heroes, he began. And they are. But they're also the most dangerous species I've ever encountered. Not because they want to hurt anyone, but because they're capable of so much and choose to hold back. He thought about everything he had witnessed over the years, the battles, the rescues, the moments of incredible kindness and terrifying violence. Let me tell you about one final conversation I had. About 6 months ago, I was assigned to work with a human admiral, the same who saved my life all those years ago. She had risen through the ranks, become one of the most respected officers in the Terran fleet. Had been surprised when he learned was now an admiral, but pleased. She had saved his life. He was glad to see her again. They had met in her office on a space station. She looked older now, with lines around her eyes and gray in her hair, but she still had that same gentle smile. Commander, she had greeted him warmly. It's good to see you again. How's the arm? Had flexed his secondary left arm, the one she had reattached 15 years ago. Perfect. You did excellent work. I'm glad. They had talked about their current assignment, about fleet movements and supply lines, but had a question that had been bothering him for years. Finally, he gathered his courage and asked, Admiral, why do you do it? Why do humans fight so hard for others? You barely knew us when the Devourer War started. We were strangers, yet your people threw themselves into battle to save us. Why? Had been quiet for a moment, looking out the window at the stars. Because we know what it's like to be alone, she had said finally. Humans spent most of our existence thinking we were the only intelligent life in the universe. We looked at the stars and saw emptiness. When we finally discovered we weren't alone, when we met other species, it changed everything. How? We realized we were part of something bigger, that we had neighbors, friends, family, and family looks out for each other. But the cost had pressed. So many humans have died protecting others. Doesn't that bother you? Had turned to look at him directly. Every death bothers me. Every soldier who doesn't come home is a tragedy. But you know what would bother me more? Standing by and doing nothing while others suffer. We have the power to help, the strength to protect. How could we not use it? Other species calculate acceptable losses. They decide how many deaths are worth the objective. Do humans not do the same? We do, but our calculations are different. We look at a situation and ask, how many people can we save? What's the maximum good we can do? Other species ask how few casualties they can accept. We ask how many casualties we can prevent. Had considered this. That seems like the same thing. It's not, had said firmly. One approach accepts failure as inevitable. The other refuses to accept it at all. That's why we take risks others won't. That's why we charge into situations others would retreat from, because we believe we can make a difference. And usually we're right. But what about when you're wrong? His expression had grown sad. Then we learn, we adapt, we try again. Humans are very good at learning from mistakes. We've had a lot of practice. Had thought about that conversation many times since, about what it meant, about the philosophy behind human actions. Humans don't fight because they enjoy it, told the recording device now. They fight because they've decided that some things are worth fighting for, and once they make that decision, nothing will stop them. He remembered the siege of VII, 800 humans holding off 100,000 enemies. They should have died. By all logical calculations, they should have been destroyed within hours. But they won, because they decided winning was the only acceptable outcome. Humans are the most contradictory species in the galaxy, continued. They cry at sad stories but laugh in the face of death. They'll risk their lives to save a wounded animal but will systematically dismantle an enemy that threatens their friends. They're kind and brutal, gentle and violent, compassionate and ruthless. And which one is their true nature? Both, said without hesitation. That's what makes them so remarkable and so frightening. They're both, all the time. The kindness is real, the violence is real. They exist together, balanced on a knife's edge. He thought about fighting with broken limbs while singing, about Sumi, the medic who refused to leave wounded soldiers, about who captured 4,000 enemies in 40 minutes without killing any of them. Each of them was kind and deadly, caring and dangerous, human. The question I get asked most often is, should we fear humans, said, and my answer is complicated. If you're their friend, their ally, someone they've decided to protect, then no, you're safer than you could possibly imagine. Humans will throw themselves between you and danger without a second thought. They'll guard you with their lives, treat your enemies as their enemies, stand with you no matter the cost. He paused, his voice becoming harder. But if you're their enemy, if you threaten what they've decided to protect, then yes, you should be very, very afraid because humans are patient. They'll try diplomacy first. They'll offer peace. They'll give you every chance to back down. But if you refuse, if you keep pushing, if you cross the line. Remember the soldier's final message. We surrender, please. Then you'll discover what humans are like when they stop being nice, when they remember that they're apex predators from a death world, when they decide that you're a problem that needs to be solved. And by then, it's usually too late. Do you consider humans a threat to galactic peace? No, said firmly. Humans are the greatest force for peace the galaxy has ever known, because everyone knows what happens if you break the peace. Humans will come for you. Not with threats, not with warnings. They'll just come, and they'll end the problem. He thought about all the conflicts that had been resolved in the past 15 years, not through human aggression but through human presence. Species that might have gone to war thought twice, knowing humans would intervene. Raiders who might have attacked shipping lanes stayed quiet, remembering the incident. Peace through strength, but also peace through compassion, because humans didn't just punish aggressors, they also helped the weak, fed the hungry, healed the sick, protected the vulnerable. The galaxy is better with humans in it, stated. Safer, more just, more kind. But that safety comes with a responsibility. We must never take human kindness for granted, never assume their mercy is weakness, never mistake their patience for inability to act. And if someone does make that mistake, then they'll learn the same lesson the devourers learned, the same lesson they learned, that humans are wonderful friends and terrible enemies, and the only thing that determines which one you get is your own actions. Leaned forward, his 3 eyes focused on the recording device. I want to be clear about something. I don't fear humans because I think they'll hurt me. I fear them because I understand what they're capable of. The violence they could unleash if they chose to. the destruction they could cause if they abandoned their principles. But they won't, will they? No, agreed. That's what makes them human. They've looked into the abyss of their own nature. They've seen the monsters they could become, and they chose to be better. They wrote rules to limit themselves, built systems to keep themselves in check. They're the only species I know that actively restrains their own power. He sat back, preparing his final statement. The galaxy needs to understand something about humanity. They evolved on a planet that tried to kill them every day. They survived by being tougher, smarter, and more determined than anything else on their world. They fought each other for thousands of years, developing weapons and tactics that no other species can match. They nearly destroyed themselves multiple times. But they didn't. No, they survived, and they learned. They learned compassion, cooperation, the value of working together instead of tearing each other apart. They took all that violence, all that capacity for destruction, and they channeled it into protecting others. His voice grew softer but more intense. I have fought the Devourers who consumed 47 civilizations. I have battled the Void Reapers who killed for pleasure. I have faced enemies that would destroy planets for resources. Every one of them was terrifying in their own way. But humans frighten you more. Yes, because all those enemies were predictable. They wanted to kill me. I understood that, but humans, they want to protect me, and they're willing to die to do it. That kind of dedication, that kind of loyalty, that kind of love, it's the most powerful force in the universe. Looked directly at the recording device, knowing that his words would be preserved for future generations, for species that hadn't met humans yet, for civilizations that would encounter them in the centuries to come. The galaxy is safer with humans as our allies, but pray to whatever gods you believe in that you never give them a reason to be otherwise. Because if you hurt what they love, if you threaten what they've decided to protect, if you cross the line they've drawn. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. Then you'll discover that the only thing more terrifying than a human enemy is a human friend who thinks you've crossed that line. Because enemies they just fight. But if you hurt their family, their friends, their loved ones, then they become something far more dangerous than soldiers. What do they become? Remembered's cold smile, quiet promise, his gentle hands that could save lives or take them. They become humans with nothing left to lose and everything to avenge. And that is the most frightening force in the known galaxy. The recording device blinked, saving his final words. Sat in silence for a moment, then spoke one last time. I am grateful every day that humans decided we were worth protecting, that they chose to be our friends instead of our enemies, and I will do everything in my power to make sure that friendship never ends, because I have seen what humans are capable of when they love you. He looked at the stars beyond the chamber window. And I never, ever want to see what they're capable of when they don't. The recording ended. His testimony was complete. The galaxy would hear his warning, and perhaps if they were wise they would listen. Humans were heroes, protectors, friends, the best allies anyone could ask for. But they were also apex predators from a death world, with the capacity for violence that few could imagine. The galaxy had been given a gift, human friendship. The only question was whether they would be smart enough not to throw it away.